Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. We have a third quarter moon squaring the sun today, and this is the Daily Medicine transmission for October 28th. Can you believe it? 2021. October 28th, 2021. I cannot. I'm kind of in awe of what's happening these days and how quickly October is over, right? It's almost over, and we are now officially going to be in the last week of this lunar cycle that started with a new moon at the beginning of October. We'll be having a new moon in Scorpio next week. We're going to have our weekly astrology report that's going to be up tomorrow. We'll do that live tomorrow. Wow. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. A special welcome to my subscribers and to those who have been a consistent part of this process. Thank you so much. Even though that it shifts and changes and people come in and they go out as necessary, it's still really great to have you here, whoever you are, and you know who you are. So, and if this is your first time here, thanks for stopping by. If you feel so inclined to come back, you can hit that subscribe button. You can like this video. You can comment on it, participate in the live chat here on YouTube, or you can share this content, and all of those things actually do support the work. And if you want to support this channel and these transmissions monetarily or financially, you can go to Subscribestar. It's in the link below. It's linked in the description box below, I should say. And you can go there. And right now I am offering $3 a month for subscriptions, and you get all of this content, and there will be subscriber only content that is coming. You can feel that we are reaching to some point of changeover. So let's get into it. There's not too much to report on. I mean, we could get into the minutia, I suppose, of the Schumann resonance and what it's doing. But what I will say is that the solar flares keep coming. There were 2 more solar flares this morning. There was a CME that did try to release from the sun, but it looks like it got collapsed back into the sun, right? So what happens in these situations? Well, there's a magnetic field around the sun, just like on our planet and every other planet. And what happens, this is a very basic understanding here. What happens is that the magnetic field of the sun will oftentimes get kind of bunched up. That's one way to put it. And it will keep things from being able to move out from underneath. And so the pressure builds, and the underneath this like bunched up all of the magnetic field is kind of like stuck, and then with the pressure underneath, it'll erupt into CMEs or solar flares. That's a really basic understanding. I would have to go back to stellar physics and to really break it down in a more scientific way. But that's the basic idea. So even the sun has a magnetic field, and those ejections or eruptions are the result of back pressure. It's not technically pressure, but you know what I mean, because the field gets all bunched up. And if you're familiar at all with kinesiology, any kind of body work, anything you are familiar with the soft tissue in the body, then you know that scar tissue and fascia, this is a very similar way that it builds. And so when it's not in alignment with the grain, right? So when you have an injury and your body builds scar tissue as part of your immune response, it does not automatically grow in the same grain as your muscle fiber, for instance. It's like a web that is meant to be like a mesh, but eventually you have to work it out, which is why massage and exercise and any kind of physical therapy is really important for injury recovery. Very, very important, and to get back to a similar state of being than before the injury. And of course, we live in a society, at least in Western medicine, where pharmaceuticals tend to be one of the primary focuses in terms of treatment. But it's really, I spent, a licensed body worker, spent 10 years doing that full-time professionally, so I could talk all day about that. Anyway, it's kind of the same thing. It gets all bunched up, but what ends up happening is that everything erupts. Anyway, so there's the sun for today. There's still solar flares. There's still activity. You can see that the sun kind of like was taking a nap, just almost like what this whole new moon cycle or this whole lunar cycle that we're still in kind of was, right? Finding that respite, finding that stillness amidst the constantly oscillating and dynamic process of trying to find balance in the world. And it's almost, we didn't necessarily go to sleep, and that wasn't the intention, but it was the intention to rest ourselves in some way, to allow for these natural processes to happen, because they're going to keep happening. And the chaos will continue to amp up in some ways. And we have to, this was our month to really get into what it takes for each of us. What is our own personalized, unique mechanism to find that still point? And so the sun's kind of waking up now too, and we are kind of waking up now too, because once we get into full-on Scorpio season, that will really energetically start with the Scorpio new moon on the 4th. It's a very almost obsessive. Scorpio is fixed water, but there is a desire for productivity with Scorpio in the 8th house in particular. You want to merge, you want to get deeper, you want to investigate, you want to be able to ultimately reap the rewards of a cooperative effort. And so production and productivity is a big part of the Scorpio and the 8th house. And so we're going to turn on very soon in terms of this. And this is why today's transmission is titled The Passionate Search, because it's very much related to this 3rd quarter moon, our Leo moon, having us shine like the sun, right? The Leo essence, right? We are each the center of our own solar system, and everything revolves around us in that moment. And that is, it really could go sideways so easily in the 5th house, right? It's very much about confidence with Leo in the 5th house, for instance, and the sun is the ruler of Leo. So it's going to be an interesting square in terms of where we're putting our attention and our focus and our outward expression versus how we feel. And I think that we are I don't want to say desperate. And I'm going to relay a personal story to kind of to show you this or to explain this. And I'm going through it too in my own way, in my own life, in my own journey of what I'm doing here and what this all means. I think it's very easy to keep, for this process on the scales here to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and faster, right? The more you learn about something, you tend to have to transfigure and reconstruct yourself on the other side. And then you learn something about that and you have to go back over here. And it's amping up. Right? Like I do feel like that with the sun waking back up, I do feel my own anxiety, a lot of disturbances in the dream state. And it's really bringing things up to the surface that really need to be addressed in each of us. And that will translate back into the microcosm. And it has a lot to do with what has been all of this time will not really help. It won't be what we see moving forward, right? It's going to be something new. And how we address that, how we interact with that, what that means to us, and what we do going forward is a big part of letting go of our old conceptions, even the old conceptions that have us, back and forth, intuitively weighing out options in our own mind. We're going to bust out of even those two options at this point. And so if you're still feeling anxious or agitated or irritated or your sleep is disrupted, the sun is really making an impact. And I will say that the Schumann really did mellow out in terms of its amplitude since yesterday. So what I think is interesting is now that there's not as much of a buffer to this onslaught of solar activity. So we're still getting information and it's still making its way to us. And how we integrate it into our experience is going to be a real measure of how we move forward, especially with this in November. November is going to really challenge us to put together some dots that we didn't even know existed, right? That seems to be where many people are working from. I can say for me, for sure, where I'm working from is just this volleying back and forth. Well, this isn't what I want, so I'll volley back to its opposition. Oh, wait, that's not what I want either, or that doesn't make sense. Well, I don't even know. I can't even visualize anything outside of these two options. Right? And remember how much of those two options have been controlled and curated for us for our entire lives, for sure, and for multiple generations. And everybody has an agenda. And even if you think your agenda is for the best, right? The fact that they are options that are presented to us as opposed to our free thinking, free exploration as natural beings is not available to us. And this is ultimately what we're leading to with this Pleiadian revival, with the nodes shifting into Scorpio and Taurus. We will be pulled into this chute, right? Into, riding the dragon, being very, very directional in terms of this feeling-based experience and communing back into the natural process around us, as opposed to the digging and the unearthing and the sinking down into the depth and it's not to say that these are negative things to be doing. We're in Scorpio season now, which will be even more so amplified as Mars comes into Scorpio, as Mercury eventually comes into Scorpio, the new moon. And so we're plunging ahead into the unknown, and we made that pretty clear yesterday with the transmission. But we have to still contend with the fact that a lot of it's relative, and we are feeling the relativity of social values when it comes to how we express ourselves. And that's square today. It's going to be happening at 4:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The sun is going to square the moon, and the sun and the moon and Saturn are in a T-square. So we'll go over that too, because Saturn is providing a lot of structure for something that's not actually real yet. It's just a wax figure of where we're going, right? Something that is presented to us as a mental archetype or mental structure of who we can be and what society can be and what the awakened collective of humanity could be, but it's not actualized yet. So this is going to factor into a lot of ultimately to the square, because how do you embark on a search for something new when you deep down feel that it's all relative, that the social value that you give to things, or that is given to what we value, ultimately is relative to time, relative to space, relative to our own experiences. That also is because we are talking about Leo, so we're all in this place of like trying to figure out who we actually are in our fullness right now, and looking for the underlying and having a strong ambition to figure something out and to be productive in that way. It's going to be an interesting day. Let's just put it that way. So the story that I want to share that really kind of helps, tie this together into real life is that, I've talked about my dad quite a bit. So he's doing really well. And I spent the weekend with him. And so to give you some backstory here to understand how difficult it has been for this person to follow the energy template that is being provided in terms of finding stillness amidst the oscillation and the dynamic process of balance and harmony. My dad was a volunteer firefighter and EMT for 40 years. He retired in 2018. So volunteer, right? So that was on top of his job, right? And he also is in the service. He was a Vietnam vet, right? So this person and a provider of a family, 3 kids, right? Totally blue collar, came from a very blue collar family as well. And our family growing up was very working class as well. I'm the first in my family to have gotten my university degree, bachelor's degree. Now, other people have since done that, but I was the first. So my parents didn't have, nor did their family members have any experience in that realm. And that's not good or bad. That's just what it is. just to show you the demographic, right? So for a man like this to be able to stay still for weeks and weeks and weeks has been one of the biggest challenges of his life, right? Because he's had to be still in order to allow his body and his spirit in a lot of ways too, to do the healing process that is natural to all of us, right? But also to find that stillness and to find that balance and to find that trust in the process as well. So now he's finally, and also too, to trust himself, because the reason why this process got so drawn out is because his original surgery was not fully, they made some mistakes at the end, and they also didn't listen to him when he came back and said there's something wrong. So it also that's outside of his control, but also too that he trusted his body enough to know that there was something wrong. So it's been months now of healing, not only from his original surgery, which was to remove cancer. He has to heal now from the surgery in general that has like completely destroyed, potentially destroyed his lungs so bad that they were going to have to take the whole thing out. So they managed to save it, and they've managed to get his lung to expand, right? Because when you take out a lobe of the lung, it will expand like a balloon back to the original size, even though it's missing some of its original volume. So he's at that point, and now he has to go into rehab because he's been lying in a bed for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so he's very weak, right? He can't really move around without help. So then he's going to go into inpatient rehab for a couple weeks, and that's going to be the focus, because that means he's healing in his lung, right? They're able to take out the chest tubes. They're able, the x-rays look good, all of this stuff. And so now he's making a transition into a new process. And I can tell that this is where a lot of us are going in our own ways. And we have been rendered in many ways, rendered into a position of having to be still, of having to really settle into a state of stillness and balance, so that we don't hastily do anything, because we're going to need to know how to find that point. So when we start investigating into the deeper structures, we start connecting dots we've never connected to before, and we go through the moon cycle of November and eclipses, right? Into a place that is really it's going to be a distortion, definitely, but we will feel the difference we will literally know the difference between how we're feeling, but how it looks on the outside. We'll know there's distortion, and it's going to take months for this eclipse to really find its full expression, as the eclipses do. But we're going to be a lot more active. I hesitate to use that word, but we will be more productive, and we will be more willing and ambitious in some ways, especially with Mars coming into Scorpio. We'll really have this ambition and this courage to really start getting to the bottom of things. But that does require that we let go of the ideas of the back and forth that we've already had, that have been instilled in us this whole time. And it's really, really uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to be like, I don't even know what's right anymore. So we've needed this in order to find our own center, and then to learn how to get back into the body, how to get back into our innate and our intuition, because it's going to be the only real thing that is going to bring us through inevitable changes, right? No matter who thinks that they know best. I mean, we're getting disclosure, right, to the fact that we are not alone, and we are going to face massive earth changes in our lifetime. There's two things that no matter what's happening, that I certainly have come to that conclusion, that those things are what cannot be stopped. How we go along the way is what people call, what timeline are you on? We're all on the same timeline on Earth, but how we experience it through our own life, basically our own actions and behaviors, and even our perspective. That's what's different, and that will be what determines our experience of it when we pop out the other side of this black hole, whatever it is, right? I have my own opinions about it based on my own research in terms of, cyclical cycles, cyclical cycles. It's very redundant. Cycles of the magnetic field and the solar cycles and what that means for Earth, and then disclosure as well, and how much has happened already, who wants to manage it, blah, blah. There's a lot there. So, and I'm not going into that right now. That might be something that we could do separately and see, just kind of have a chat, see where people are at about that whole concept. But we're about to embark on some more searching, like really intentional searching. And for now, we're as the moon is officially now in her, last waning phase, starting today into the next new moon. It's, those aspects from the full moon that we were made aware of in their fullness are starting to diminish, right? Our awareness of it and our ability to perceive it clearly, even though it's a reflection, is diminishing. So it's an interesting position to be in, and I do feel like a lot of massive changes are gonna still happen. I mean, and the 28th, like today, is I'm curious to see how this day turns out. Let's just put it that way. So that was my diatribe. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to move over to the chat real quick. Today's title is Everything. Oh, well, that's awesome. I feel like it is too. It's very much related to where the sun is in Scorpio. And then Barbara Hill just has an emphatic yes. So I think we're all on the same timeline. We're all on the same vibe here. And it's okay to keep looking and searching, and we're still in Gemini in the North Node. And I will tell you too that Black Moon Lilith is just stationed retrograde, and she's in Gemini as well. So that's something to also keep in mind, because that's an oscillating position as well, that dark feminine, that part of ourselves that demands to be heard and demands to be acknowledged and demands. There's very demanding from Lilith. And there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. It's all about context, of course, but it's something deeper than even just us. It's our connection to the natural world and to the planet, and a sense of protection and preservation for that. So that position is now in its retrograde in Gemini, and asteroid Ceres is in Gemini, and she's retrograde, and she's meeting Aldebaran today. So they're and the nodes, right? I mean, especially the North Node is at the, coming so close to the very end of its time in Gemini for now, and meeting Alcyon very soon. So there's still a lot of energy in the sky, in the cosmos, that is drawing us to consider, explore, discover things, okay? But and for really, it seems to be very much connected to the planet and our connection to each other, and the self-preservation and preservation of the natural world. We have Ceres involved, we have Black Moon Lilith involved. So it's not that we should be letting go of our desire and our discovery and exploration. That's certainly still on the menu. It's just that we are embarking on something that is beyond the duality at this point, to consider new things. So let's I want to go right into the reading. I don't have too much to share otherwise at this time. So here we go. Let's do this. Here we go. I do anticipate that there is going to be, I mean, we've been talking about this forever. It's like, when is it ever going to freaking happen? It is happening. That's the thing. You're talking about cycles that are so big and so massive and stretch over such long periods of time that it does seem like things are not happening. When I used to work in something called residential treatment. It's like, locking kids up for mental health and behavioral problems that are not necessarily committing crimes, or not yet, but they've established that they could very well be on their way. So anybody that's been in that system, it's the system, you know what I'm talking about. And it would be really difficult on the day in and day out to see any progress being made with these kids. But then it's like months down the line when they're actually finally about to be discharged or go back out into the community that you realize that the consistency every single day with these kids, even though in those moments there was struggle and there was outbursts and there were mistakes and all kinds of challenges, that the consistency over time and being consistent was one of the most important elements of actually being able to assist and guide these children through their healing process. It was the consistency. And then it was on the other end that you were like, wow, look at how far you come in your healing process and your ability to, be part of the world, which in some ways is just like, well, is it really something wrong with them, or is it wrong? Or they just are so sensitive to how fucked up the world is that they have no choice but to act it out. These are real questions that I asked, which is why I got out of that, because I was like, it was so much damage to all of us. It's a system that is ultimately broken and reflects how much of we're all subjected to that. Some overarching authority basically confining us to these pressure cooker situations that are like, okay, you're going to be here until we deem that you are acceptable for society. And some of those children were really, really traumatized. And I can understand why they needed to be away, because they were offenders and they were very young. We don't need to go all the way down there. The whole point of that is just, it's hard to see the progress on the day to day. It's usually on the back end of things when you remember where you started that you're like, oh. So I would keep that in mind as we especially go through this reading, okay? Because, people are like, when's Red October happening? And why isn't there this? There's shit happening constantly, right? And it's about your consistency in the midst of all of it that's going to actually make a difference in your life. So, and all of our lives. So here is our 4 of discs, power. Now, this is not about authority power, although the sun in Capricorn certainly would lend itself to that authority aspect when it comes to Saturn being the ruler of Capricorn. So what is Capricorn as a sign? It is cardinal Earth. It is the unfolding of the material reality, the matrix of reality. It is the machinery of nature itself, right? That is unfolding, that is executing the building. And so with the sun here, it's full illumination, full vitality of this energy. So it's power. And you can see that there's like a moat around it, and there's a space in the middle, which I really, really value about this card, because it's not about control. It's more about security and certainly financial gain. That's part of it, but it's about the success, establishment, proficiency, because you need to be proficient in order to build something this secure and established. There's a comfort and security here. Now, Capricorn, what's in Capricorn? It's Pluto, right? So our comfort and security certainly is under the authority of the great destroyer right now. Comfort and security, well-deserved reward for good work. That's also part of it as well. And when's the sun in Capricorn? It's actually at the winter solstice, and then through January into February. So it's like being able to get yourself through the winter with the harvest. This is what it really represents. And the establishment of the community and what it's able to create together that provides for everybody. And it has nothing to do with ruling force. Now, that's when it's reversed, I could really see how that would be the case. This power is about the power for us to be successful and to have security and to have an establishment of some sort. So this is our causal factor. Now, this can be, today, into the end of today. This could be in the recent past. This could be us as a society, this comfort and security. And I would argue that it's all of those things. And especially because we also, the Pluto has been in Capricorn now, and Saturn was in Capricorn more like 2017. So really establishing whose patent and whose power. That's the other thing. But there's a moat around this card, but there's entrance into this fortress from all angles except here. Now the sun is shining, but there's like, you can't see the pathway. You just see the little door right here. And all these are all the alchemical symbols for fire, water, air, and earth as well. So there's also this sense that the material world itself, right, is the square, the four, as well, is very structured. It's very secure, and it provides an establishment of some sort. So this is our causal factor, a sense of power, a sense of security, a sense of establishment, a sense of like a fortress in our lives. And we all know here that the four is a momentary experience of security and material structure. But it's still important in this moment. So then we move into, the Princess of Wands. Again, she shows up a lot lately. So, and she's also reversed right now. This is not a good look for Venus when she's like this, right? Because she lacks true warmth of the heart. She's faithless. She's self-indulgent, right? She's theatrical and dramatic. We do have a moon in Leo, and we also have Venus in a fire sign, which is Sagittarius. So unable to feel real compassion and understanding, pure greed and cruelty, burning down the object of her desire, and arrogance. It's really not a good look when it's reversed, right? She's kind of a bitch. And real, not even that. It's all dramatic for her and fulfilling what she wants. And she can be so greedy and hyper-focused on herself. And with the moon in Leo, with Venus in a fire sign, a Sagittarius right now, this is it's pretty much whoever is embodying this, I can't say for sure, but it's certainly showing that's pretty dramatic in itself. Unable to feel compassion and understanding, and greedy and cruel, and lack all true warmth of the heart. So, I don't really feel like that explains any of us that are here right now. What it does say, though, is when you are when we look at the vertical axis here, I think it'll make more sense. But when you're faced with something that compromises or threatens your security, your establishment, your fortress, you may find yourself in this position. Because what does Venus want? She wants to be secure and comfortable in the natural world. So something to keep in mind is that Venus will be moving into Capricorn here very, very soon. And so I think that there will be some maturity around these issues that's going to come into play. And she will actually be stationing retrograde in Capricorn this winter. So there is that to consider as well. But in the meantime, see, this is the thing. It brings out all of this in us when we have security and a sense of power about the world, or the world around us, and how it can contain us and secure us. It makes us unnecessarily kind of self-indulgent and kind of greedy and theatrical. Well, we're not really thinking about other people. We're just thinking about how we want to get what we want for ourselves. So, and at the very base here, just being unaware of other people. It doesn't even have to get this bad. Just being unaware of other people, being mostly focused on the object of your desire and doing whatever you can to bring it to you, and being kind of arrogant. And I think arrogance, that just went off somehow for me. The arrogance part, it's like when you have power and establishment and security in some way, there is I think it does bring out a certain amount of arrogance about our position, so that we're just kind of carefree, but not in a joyous way with the reversal. It's more of just like, I'm just focused on myself, and I'm, don't even consider the fact that I could get knocked off this, pedestal, or be burnt by this flame myself. And if I lose any of my security. And this is where we're going here, because what we see is the Eight of Forces. Now it's upright. Usually when it's reversed, which is what we've been getting a lot of, it's showing that, there have been instances where things have split apart and been destroyed already, so it's time to move on. When it's upright like this, it's active. The lightning bolt. It is a time of splitting apart. And I would say that in this position of underneath the surface, subconscious, where we're drawing our power, I would say that it has not transpired yet, that it is very much embedded in the subconscious, which means that we will invariably bring it forward, right? The template exists for this within each of us at this point. It's a metaphorical death, right? It's a time of splitting apart, and we could feel very wounded or very disappointed and grieving for what is lost. But the thing is, we've been aware of the difficulty for this for a long time, and we've been unwilling to, generally, this is a general statement, unwilling to acknowledge it, right? This is the storm that has been brewing and even active for a long time, but then it's that lightning bolt that we can't quite predict it, but we aren't surprised that it happens, right? So we have to accept the situation and not fight what is, right? We have to be in our beingness and allow for, however you conceptualize the universe or God or divine source or the divine consciousness, right? The divine intelligence work through you, because the benefit is coming, but it takes this ending first in order to start a new beginning. And we've been talking about this all week, right? And so now it just keeps coming back around. And now it's really showing that under the surface, we aren't quite aware of it yet, but it's very much an energetic template that is part of us right now, and that we will bring forward is very much something that we're going to have to acknowledge and let go of, and be ready for some sort of like splitting apart or some sort of massive shift in our reality, or something that is a very big ending, that seemingly is like, whoa, what was that? So I don't know when this is coming necessarily, but the template exists. And there have been plenty of these opportunities that have come back around over the course of, the last couple of years, but we can feel, I know you can, because I can feel it too. Something is brewing and it's coming. And so now it's moved into all of our subconscious. You may find yourself investigating this perspective or these ideas, like in your dreams. You might be doing journaling or automatic writing, even just like in daydream or fantasy or whatever, or any kind of artwork or synchronicity, right? It's, something is brewing. So, but where we can really put our attention right now, I think is really important, is our inspiration. The muse is our ability to be inspired artistically from a place that seemingly is not within us. So any good artist will tell you that their creative expression and their ideas, it come as they release their ego and their mind to pure experience and pure being, and then this allows the inspiration to come forward. And so this is a time of heightened resourcefulness, right? This is a time where we are uplifted and there's imagination, there's inspiration, there's inventiveness. Keep this in mind, because this is directly related to the new moon that's happening next week. Inventiveness and an ability to be inspired. Keep this on the top of your mind. I would recommend to keep this at the top of your mind, in the front of your awareness, to really release the uncomfortable feelings, and ultimately release the energy of this splitting apart and this destructive element that's going to come through. Release it through being inspired, because even if you find your world shattered in some ways because of something that is destroyed, it is making new room for something new. And the inspiration can be something as simple as, oh, I see now, so I'm going to make room for something new as part of my being inspired and being resourceful, be inspired to do these types of things or to create this space even. This is where the muse, and this is a very much like a Piscean 12th house type of energy with the muse, right? Because it's when you dissolve into pure experience in Pisces that you are able to, you're connected to all time and space simultaneously. We all are. It's just a matter of letting all of the other aspects of the personality kind of drop to the side so that you can, this is why meditation and prayer is so important. And any kind of modality that allows you to get into this space. Reiki is amazing for this. A lot of energy modalities, but Reiki is very much connected to the highest divine energy. So the divine energy is the highest, I should say. So that's one way, but there are lots of different ways to be inspired and to get into the flow, right? There's a lot of ways to do that, but I would say that we can put our attention and to be inspired to create space for something new as opposed to trying to reestablish that security. Because, it's pretty clear that it's going away because the Emperor reversed is pretty much directly related to the Sun in Capricorn or the Four of Discs. The Four of Discs is much more about an experience of having this and doing it along the way of the journey through the element of the discs or the pentacles. But the Emperor is a lot more substantial. He represents the father of all of this. Notice he's got the lamb, right? So this is Aries. We're looking at Aries. We're looking at these two, they look like two phoenix birds, and this very red sun in the background on the shield, right? On the shield. And so there's something about this duality as well, because Aries as a sign, you will find as you move through the sign, has a lot to do with the internalized duality that we create ourselves from, that we work with. Just like a seed has all of these processes within itself that are eventually going to start activating and pushing the seed open so that the life form can grow. So there's something about the inherent duality. There's newness, right? There's a flag here. This lamb has the flag. Also seems to have a little halo or a corona or a golden disc around it. So there's divinity there. We got the ram on either side. So the mature lamb, the male mature lamb. Also with the crown here is, you remember this is the same leg position that the hanged man has, except the hanged man is upside down. And so there is still an experience of structure and support within the person. But in the hanged man, it's completely let go. You're looking at the very end of the cycle, number 12. And even though this is number 4 in the tarot, it's Aries. It's the fresh new, desire to actualize oneself, the impulse to be, very strong. He's got a globe in its hand. He's got a ram on the head of the staff or the wand here. This is a very powerful card, and it's all fire, lots of fire. Princess of Wands and then the Emperor, but the Emperor is reversed in this picture. So it is Sun in Capricorn in a lot of ways in terms of what it represents, but in terms of the zodiac, it's fire and Aries, because ultimately you get to the Sun in Capricorn through the very beginning, which is the impulse to be. You don't get to success, establishment, proficiency, security without the first spark of an impulse to be. And this is what this represents. So it inevitably takes you to that full, the zenith, right? The Sun in Capricorn is the sun at noon. It's at the top of the chart. So, but you can't get there without this impulse to be and this structure within ourselves. So again, structure of civilization, it's an abstraction of establishment, right? Within the individual self, stability and security. So let's look at it reversed. So the stability is rated higher than ethics. Oh, right? This is the Great Reset written all over it, right? Where people, problem, reaction, solution, the Hegelian dialectic is provided for us, and people will pick stability over their own morals and ethics and what they identify as right. that's really strongly coming forward right now. Restrictions and borders are placed on things like the spontaneity of your spirit and nature. That's something that comes out, especially comes out in terms of the boy. I really hesitate to say it because you can easily get struck by saying the wrong thing about climate change. But it does remind me of restrictions and borders on the spontaneity of nature, right? Where we have to, and our own spirit too, but like trying to consolidate everybody into smaller larger concentrations of people in urban areas, limiting access to certain resources and natural spaces, all for the sake of a sense of security. And at the worst here, despotism, self-complacency, and rationalism as a prison. That's another aspect of this where it's reversed. So, I mean, we are coming into a place that is going to flip our security and stability right on its head. And it's going to test our ability to be stable and secure within ourselves. While this is happening, and we already know it's coming because the template of it energetically is in the root of our subconscious. It's already in the seed of our creation. And that, I think we all know that it will ultimately provide the new ground and the fertile ground for something new to grow. And if we embark on this with fear about what we're losing, especially stability and security, then we won't really allow this process to unfold naturally. So when we look at the guidance here around this, first we have the initiation and the Count Saint Germain. So I'm going to link this into Telegram, and if I remember, I'll link it in the comments or the description box of this video, but I think I'm just going to link it to Telegram. I really, Facebook's great and all, not really, but I find myself less and less interested in participating, especially things like this, like putting links up and having like chats about it or interaction. But there is a video that I just watched yesterday that's about the transition from the Kali Yuga into the Satya Yuga and what that entails. And it does, there's a lot of crossover there with the Aquarian age and the Satya Yuga. And I've heard people talk about, and I've heard and read in other places that Saint Germain, as an ascended master, will become kind of the figurehead, the divine figurehead for the age of Aquarius, as where, Christ was the main avatar or figurehead or whatever archetype. And I'm not saying he didn't exist as an archetype. What I'm saying is that the age of Pisces made the most, that was the way that age was able to come into some sort of archetypal form through that experience of the Christ, of Jesus Christ. So I'm not saying that I advocating for this or not. I'm just telling you what I've explored and discovered is that Saint Germain, right, the keeper of the violet flame, which is for sure related to Aquarius in terms of it is the third eye opening. It's the knowledge, not so much the experience, which is Pisces, but the knowledge of our interconnectedness at a universal level, right? It is the knowing, whereas Pisces is the experience of it. And what it feels like to be all connected to each other and the rest of the universe simultaneously. This will be much more of a, the focus will be on knowing our spiritual nature. Anyway, so Count Saint Germain is said to be, going to be the avatar, I guess, of the Aquarian age. That's a real challenge for people who are very identified with their Christian, very specifically their Christian religion, especially if you're really attached to the Bible still, or at all. So even, I'll tell you what, that this whole, especially this week, but it's been this whole month, but definitely in the last week, there, a lot of challenges to my preconceived or even recently conceived of ideas of what's real have been coming down. And so being willing to be uncomfortable and to consider all of the possibilities, even if you don't agree or like them or believe it, I think is really helpful, just to be clear about it with yourself. So if that challenges you about Saint Germain, it's okay. Maybe just sit with it for a while and see how it feels. Now, the initiation part, though, is saying that what is coming through with the lightning bolt is, in fact, the initiation into our higher self. And specifically, we're moving into a higher revelation of our insight, our power, and what we can achieve at a spiritual level when we are making that our primary focus in life. So part of this is the loss of a lot of lower vibe situations. And that I feel like will come very naturally as a result of whatever this splitting apart is. Now, some people still, we're still kind of operating, I'm sure, under some idea here of this 2-world split, 3D to 5D. But I feel like that it's more about, how you're going to experience the coming fixed points in time and space that we're in, how you're going to experience it, what your reality is going to be like as a result of where we're going, based on your attachment to things, especially if you're still attached to what is going to be wiped away in some ways. The disciplines that we create right now are going to make a difference later. And so if you find yourself being called to do certain things, like maybe make some dietary changes, maybe go on a fast or a cleanse, maybe you find yourself like, I should start instituting a new habit of meditation daily or prayer daily or Reiki daily, whatever it is, this is a good time to do it, because it's preparing you for this initiation that's going to be brought forward, I feel like, by this really impactful event that has been brewing for a while, okay? And the cardinal makes that even more obvious to us in terms of a message, right? That we have to get ourselves back into equilibrium. Some people are hyper-fixated on the physical, so that's your primarily 3D life. Some people are hyper-fixated on the spiritual, and they are erroneously thinking that they're still, this is my opinion, completely focused on being in the 5D and being in that really heady space and not on Earth at all. And our job here, this is what this whole process is for, is to bring these things together. It is true alchemy where we square the circle. We come to realize that we are immortal spiritual beings in a biological body. And that's what this is all meant to be for, is to coming to realize this. Because when you come to realize and accept that, then as a society, as a globe, then I think disclosure happens in a way that's not nearly as detrimental. The problem is that the coming natural catastrophe cycle that we're definitely in it's going to necessitate disclosure perhaps before humanity is ready. And perhaps what we're looking at is not so much that, although that is coming. I think that's more in the next 7 to 10 years. But what I think in the near future, we're going to be addressing something in particular that's going to bring this for each of us individually, right? Something that's going to put us back on our course. And I think that somebody, I think it was Barbara, had made this comment the other day about how the agitation and the anxiety and these situations that keep coming up are really orienting us in the direction we actually need to go. And some people are just more resistant to it than others. And I feel like that part of that, it's going both ways. If you're like too hyper fixated on these upper realms of reality and your spiritual progress without being in tune to reality here, that's not good. And then if you're completely focused on the physical, then you're gonna, the fear program is going to be so easily instigated in you that you'll be very controllable, and you will give up your freedom for security or your spontaneity for your security as well. And it's going to be very difficult to hold space for people that are still in that resonance It's going to be very difficult. So speaking of which, the condor, you're too enmeshed in the situation. So we want to be inspired. We want to be resourceful. We want to use our imagination and be inspired to create something or create the space for something new. I think that's really where the resourcefulness and the inspiration can really be directed. But it's really showing us that when you're like enmeshed in the situation, as this card says, it's important that we take a step back and get that much higher perspective. We have Mercury in Libra and we have Mars in Libra for one more day. So we're going to be soon leaving the territory that really encompasses this kind of transcendent viewpoint of a bird up in the sky, excuse me. So it's going to be very difficult to hold space for this and to be, have yourself rooted in reality as things are falling away, and they continue to do so. And it's very easy to get caught up in the hype of the back and forth, even though you might be on the side of medical sovereignty and look at how corrupt everyone is. And that's not real, but you get caught in a web, you're caught in the trap if you keep back and forth. It's like, we all know this now. We all know this. And now we have to start being able to conceptualize what we're going to do next, because that's not going anywhere anytime soon. That's one of the few mechanisms that they have left to keep people in control. But when you're so connected to the situation, you get pulled into it. So this is saying we have to back out. Have that much larger wingspan, that much larger perspective. And there's something to be said for this detachment, so we can be really compassionate. And this is hard for empath people, and Pleiadians, starseeds tend to be empath people. So it's important that we acknowledge that we may be feeling things that aren't ours. And then that kind of initiates some desire to act. And when we have a sun in Scorpio, the drive and the ambition and kind of tearing ourselves away from something familiar is very strong in order to get something of more value, to be more productive. But we have to also realize with this, where the moon in Leo is, right, that it's all relative. This back and forth, it's relative to the much larger picture here. So you can get a much larger picture when you take a step back and look at things from a much higher perspective, because we are meant to be creating the space for something new. The Four of Forces is springtime, and in particular, what are we doing in spring? I do feel like that spring is going to be a big deal in general, but it's a time in this, coming into 2022. But I will say, in terms of the symbol, it's a time of active preparation, right? Springtime is Aries. So the fact that the Emperor is reversed in this situation, it's really interesting, because it's like we're going to have to turn over the land so that we can really create something new, and put in a little more effort now as you lay the groundwork for the time ahead. And where can that effort go? Well, I would say it can go into internal, inner review, putting in those new or reassessing your routines and your habits. We're going to have a moon in Virgo very soon. That's after this moon in Leo. So through the Halloween weekend, the moon will be in Virgo. What a great time to really deeply consider and feel out those works, those habits. What is it that we're doing on a regular basis, especially emotionally, that's going to actually allow us to bring forward the fruits of our labor. So this is it's a very creative period that requires more time and attention. So we have to engage ourselves with joy, with optimism, into laying the groundwork for the time of the next cycle of growth, because it is coming. And I feel like that we get hyper fixated on, and it's intentional, right? It's intentionally directing all of us there to that place where we get caught in the loop, right? Which is why October is so important, to not get caught in the loop, to find the still point in the center and let the loop just keep looping. And you can pop in and out as you need to, right? I'm doing it all the time, but attachment to it is really what is going to work against us now, because now it's going to be more impactful than I think it ever has been. That's just my sense of it. So I'd be curious what other people have to say about it. So I'm going to pop over to the chat. Thank you for sharing about your dad. It really does illustrate this transition of patience and reorientation we're all going through, waiting for the new stability to kick in, if it ever does. Well, I think it's going to kick in within us. It's the only way. That's how I feel about it. It's got to come from each of us first, and then you'll start to see it. You'll start to see it reflected outside of you. And the more that we each do this, the more powerful the resonance becomes. So the system also reminds me of how we train autistic kids how to mimic normal behavior. I question why we're all expected to fit into the same box. Yes, to that. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I question that too. And, for all of the starseeds that have just like never fit into the box and really struggled with that as a young person, I mean, that's, me for sure. And I know many of you other people out there feel that too. You can see now why, right? Why that's happened, because if you didn't spend a lifetime like dealing with that at a very personal level, it would be a lot harder right now to push against the narrative that's being shoved down all of our throats on either side of things, right? I mean, it should, none of these medical issues should be political at all, and that's made them a weapon. Of course, the whole thing has been weaponized from the beginning, so that's part of it too. But let's look at the astrology. I think that was a really powerful and insightful reading for today. And I feel myself doing this back and forth, and it's really coming out again, like I said, in my dreamscape. And going back and forth between two positions that are ultimately not where you want to be either, but we haven't really conceptualized, what it will feel like to actually go into this new place, because we have an entire lifetime of fitting into what's already been provided for us. As Emily said, why have we been shoved into these boxes? Now, some people would argue that it's been intentional so as to mitigate the inevitable disclosure in order to protect humanity. But I say, my personal opinion about that is, that has to end. Humanity as a whole and each individual has to be actually free and free to be able to make that assessment and connection themselves. And I guess if your intention is to minimize the damage of the entire collective as we reach new transitions, then I can see how certain things would need to be controlled for. Have you ever watched The Umbrella? I recommend that. If you haven't watched The Umbrella Academy or don't know what it is, you can find it's a Netflix series. I think there's 2 seasons. No, there's a lot in there that I'm going to go back and rewatch it now, because it's been a couple years, and my perspective, just like the rest of us, has changed so much in such a short amount of time. And some things haven't changed at all. It taking us back to some really original truth that maybe we buried very deeply beneath the surface for a long time. But The Umbrella Academy, I really recommend it. Both seasons that are out. Because I feel like there's a lot of disclosure in that show. And it also, again, the starseed theme comes back around. The starseed theme is in a lot of pop culture references. I think, personally, we've talked about Harry Potter endlessly, but watch The Umbrella Academy. You're going to see, again, what that, starseed actually means. And there's, it's very entertaining. It's very well written. And I think that there's a lot of soft disclosure and it's been like that for decades, right? It's been like that for decades, preparing people mentally. So, and factions fighting with each other, of course. Anyway, so let's get back to here now. This is the chart for today. We have our third quarter moon that's going to square the sun. So we have a fixed square, and there'll be a T-square with Saturn. So we'll talk all about that. So let me make sure that I minimize all of my unused windows. So the moon in Cancer, you could even feel as of last night. So before it moved into Leo, it had a square with Mars at the very last degrees of Libra. So the last degrees of Cancer, the moon is at home. It's in its rulership in Cancer. So the incredible amount of intuitive weighing out of alternatives was very strong. And I'm not going to share the specifics because they're for me, but I will say that this dynamic played out in my dream like perfectly, like the way that it played out in terms of the imagery that my mind used, and what, the symbols and the interactions and my relationship with it. It was like this to a T, because this degree really represents the intuitive weighing of two seemingly equal options, and really using nothing more than your intuition in order to come to a conclusion or to make a decision. The square to Mars in this position really highlighted the discomfort that is coming from a very strong impulse acting out that we're all having to really get a hold of a transcendent knowledge that spans generations, right? Because true philosophy really is about understanding the whole picture, like a holistic view of knowledge. And Libra is about knowledge and the application specifically of knowledge. So as the more that Mars is getting closer to Scorpio, I feel like its power is coming back. So it's in its detriment in Libra. It's at its weakest point. It's very diplomatic. The impulse to be is really directed towards balance and harmony in a social context or a relationship. It's really not we don't find ourselves acting on our own self-interest very much. It's more of wrapping our self-interest up in the collective and social order and the balance of it, right? But as Mars is getting closer to Scorpio, you can feel it. You can feel this like drive and urge and hunger and almost obsession, because Mars is a co-ruler of Scorpio. Is the ancient ruler of Scorpio before Pluto was discovered. So, and because it's a personal planet, it's going to be way more accessible to each of us in our daily activity and lives in Scorpio, as opposed to Pluto being this very large, vast, in terms of its impact on the death and rebirth process. It's much more about large cycles and very deep, powerful energy. Whereas Mars is just giving us the ambition and the courage to go into the Scorpio realm, because the impulse to be needs to be there to be productive in a relationship, right? That's really important. So you can feel Mars getting more powerful. So, and what this represents, like I said, is wanting to somehow collect or interact with or gather in the entire, tome of humanity's knowledge, right? That, and passing it down through generations, like having access to, the Akashic records, or even more like not even Akashic records, because that's very spiritual and energetic and karmic. I would say even like the Library of Alexandria, if you want to use something to make sense of this in terms of this part of Libra, like the vast storehouse of all of the human knowledge that's passed down through generations. We really, really want to find that, to act on it somehow. And the square here is that there was a very deep, very intuitive, very thoughtful in our emotions and our feeling weighing out of these two aspects within us. So that was a very interesting connection. And what, it's like we can't necessarily connect to this vast, enduring knowledge of all humanity while we are internalizing and internally having this battle within ourselves. Because that's really what it feels like, this battle within ourselves, while Mars is like marching on to the Library of Alexandria and being like, I want access to the full range of information. Boy, that's definitely how I've been feeling. That's for sure. So that was overnight. And then the moon comes into Leo. So based on where we find ourselves after, because these are fixed, cardinal energies. So they have a lot of momentum behind them when they meet. So you could really spin out into a completely different part of space and time at this point. So when we really take with us this into Leo, as in terms of how we feel about ourselves, our true selves, and our expression of selves, our artistic expression, our light shining from within, and being the center of it all. Everything gravitates towards us when we have Leo, especially a moon in Leo. We're really feeling that. So as we've come into that, we're going to find the first thing that's going to happen, which was this morning, is that the moon comes into a trine with the south node and comes into a sextile with the north node. So right at 2 degrees exactly. So we're still... And the nodes too, if you track the average or the mean node, it's just going to give you the average. But if you track the true node, just like Black Moon Lilith, it oscillates. It goes direct and it goes retrograde. It goes direct, you know what I mean? Because it's doing this. It's oscillating in a smaller pattern, just like Black Moon Lilith is oscillating as a position. So right now it's direct, and it's going to go back into that 2nd to 3rd degree for a little bit. But right now, it's at this 2 degree mark, and that's where the moon was an exact sextile. So what have we talked about with the 2 degrees? Well, it's the contrast to the essence of that sign. So whereas Gemini is about exploration and discovery, the contrast to that is to be open and willing to receive, right? Where we're willing to go and explore and discover new information and the whole realm of ideas, but at the same time, we have to also balance that out with a willingness and an openness to receive what is being shown to us as well. And the same thing with Leo. The 1st degree of Leo is the blood rushing to the head, right? It's the release of the Kundalini. The life force moves through the blood. And so it's the release of that. And like if you've ever got, when you're really like aroused about something or excited or passionate, right? You get really flush. The blood moves through your body. You kind of like, sweat a little sometimes. And that can be, you can compare that to a lot of different activities that get you aroused and excited, but that's the idea generally. And so the other side of that, the contrast, is that you will inevitably spread this to other people. It'll be infectious because of how powerful it is, which is about Aquarius, right? We're all connected together. It's the knowledge of being all connected together, which is the opposite of Leo. It is the full geometric pattern, whereas Leo is all of the individual nodes. So that 2 degrees is the idea that we are inspired in that moment, right? The blood is moving through us due to our passion, but it's so powerful that it'll be infectious. It'll spread to other people, because the Leo and Aquarius are just like all of the axes. They are inseparable from each other. So this sextile here, it's like we're all being drawn to this conclusion right now that has to do with being open and willing to receive the information that we have embarked upon exploring and discovering, right? And with a sense of like, as a blessing in some ways, right? We're being drawn to this area, and the sextile with the moon, right? This reconciliation or this harmonious investment in each other is that it can be, in fact, our willingness to do so can actually be infectious when we bring it right into our personalized experience and feeling, right? And we can also feel with the moon, we can also feel other experiences from outside of us, right? The moon is the agent for us to connect into the fabric of reality, of all time space. The moon is what allows us to do that, not the sun. The moon is what allows us to do that in terms of an archetypal reference. So we can apply these things to each other, where it'll be we can feel how infectious it is when each of us is in our full creative expression and our passion is moving through us, and we can apply that and invest that into this direction that has us really being open to receive the blessings, to receive the information that we have embarked upon discovering. So that's pretty interesting, and that's happening. That just happened early this morning. This says 9:45, so if you go back a little bit, it'll be exact, probably about 9 a.m. roughly. So that's important, because what we're going to find is that Venus also will be in a sextile to Jupiter today, right? Ras Al Hag. It's in the within the, I guess like an orb, or almost exact with Ras Al Hag, right? The head, the star, the head of the serpent bearer, or the serpent tamer. And we talked about this a lot when Juno was here, because these two were able to reconcile their differences in that moment as a result of being able to really manage our ability to heal and the power that allows us to heal, which is the serpent medicine, right? There is a time and place for all of it. And isn't it interesting that this, and I've talked about this before, how this symbol and what it represents has been cast into a very negative light through certain channels, right? And I think it's worth considering why that is. And I'm not suggesting that you full on engage in black magic or the occult necessarily, or step away from any of your spiritual beliefs, but it's important to realize that it's so much of it has been created to control us and making us an entire group of people afraid of this rather than just seeing it for what it is. I think is really interesting, and it's about healing, and it's about harnessing our natural alchemical energy, or the chi in the body, the kundalini, harnessing it in order to heal, in order to progress and to evolve. That's really powerful. And so again, we're heading into a new direction here with where Venus is in particular. And so you have these two benefics that are in a sextile each other, right? They're going to support and lift each other up in this moment. So it's important to realize that we are in a period of transition. Venus is making it very palpable to us in our resources and our relationships and the material world that we interact with in our senses. And remember, the Princess of Wands is Venus in the fire signs, and she is in a fire sign right now. So there is a period of transition. It's important that we can imitate and accept the ways of a new stage while retaining our inner integrity. That's really important about this. And the sextile and the mutual support that these two are giving to each other, especially with Jupiter, who rules Sagittarius, is this larger than life, expansive, advocate, benefactor type of energy that is really giving us everything we need in order to have a very disciplined control over the collective's natural energy. It's very powerful. It's one thing to have control over our own energy, like our Kundalini, for instance, that fifth house. This is where the moon is. It's one thing to have control over that. It's quite another to be able to handle the full knowledge of our interconnection with everything in the universe. And we have the capacity to do so, but it requires a lot of discipline and training. And Jupiter has been supporting that and giving us everything we need in that process, even if we don't like it. And so they'll be able to mutually support each other in this moment, because Venus is is reminding, I think, Jupiter, like, of the very real experience of this, that it will require us to accept the transition, to consciously accept the new ways and the new stage of experience, to be ready for the opportunities that are being presented, that are training opportunities, and to maintain and retain our inner integrity as we are, giving ourselves an opportunity to practice what it'll be like to be in this new stage. Now, this sextile, I think, is really, again, Jupiter and Venus are two benefics, but they also, if you really break them down in terms of their dark side, they also are hyper fixated on themselves too. So you have to keep that perspective in mind when you work with this energy. And with the Princess of Wands being reversed, that is a pretty clear indication right now that, it's almost like there's a potential to not maintain our inner integrity, or to blast through this transition and kind of like demand these opportunities, or it's kind of, it's interesting. But Jupiter is going to kind of put the, kind of make sure that we're operating under the same paradigm or social value system in terms of, the collective's knowing of the ability to hold, the age of Aquarius, essentially, that we are all connected. And what does that mean? What does that mean for all of us? And what kind of opportunities are being presented right now that allow us to really get even better handle? And this goes into the initiation aspect of Saint Germain, because if you do accept that symbol or that avatar is in fact the representation or the representative of the age of Aquarius that we're going into, then we know that this is a big initiation process, and we're being provided opportunities to practice and to accept where we're going, without like just being totally blindsided by the experience with this sextile. That's really important today. All right, let's see here. Next, so then the moon, there's not much going on for the rest of the day until the moon comes into that square. And so let's go into that real quick, because this is, and it's a T-square with Saturn. You see it right here. There's opposition with the moon and Saturn, a Leo moon and Saturn in Aquarius. That's a big power struggle right there. That's a big power struggle. You can see it in the reading already, how much of it is a big power struggle. And the sun is actually going to be the point that allows us to harness the potential energy of this a lot better. These two squares, yeah, they're uncomfortable, and they're all fixed, right? Fixed square, because fixed air, fixed water, fixed fire. So they're all pretty staunchly in their positions when they meet each other as well. And now there's something about the sun in Scorpio right now, this passionate search for new values, that's really going to really take it's like taking the tension off of this opposition in some ways. So passionate search for new values, right? The willingness to kind of gamble everything on a risk to find something more valuable, right? And so we're finding ourselves really sustained by this ambition and this journey, right? This passionate search for something new. And when we talk about passion, we are talking about Leo as well, but the passion is something that has to do with the productivity in society, what we create together, the resources we create together, and the resource of, two aspects coming together, and looking for a new value, something more valuable. So it's like the gold rush, people left their homes and gave up everything and took a risk to like go and find gold. It's kind of the same idea. And so the square to the moon, as these third quarter squares always represent, which is a crisis in consciousness, while we're passionately searching for something new, something more valuable, we are contending with a very real feeling that social values are relative, right? That's a clear that is a clear friction right there. When we each are feeling strongly the relativity of social values, fashion, social morals, that kind of thing. Now, there's no, this doesn't apply necessarily to natural law. This is about social values, right? So the standard view here of the Sabian symbol, you got the conservative and the older conservative and the younger progressive facing off with each other. They're both human beings. They're both in different generations, and they both are staunchly connected to where their political views are. And that's the whole point, is that it's all relative to your experience, your age, your perspective. And when you feel into that and you have this intuitive sense that it's all relative, how is it that you can really express yourself into this search for new values in terms of production, when you realize that the friction that will lead to this in any way, right? The friction between the conservative and the progressive, for instance, right? It's just a way to understand it. How are you gonna, what's the point? What's the point of searching for these new values, or to leave it all behind? But then again, leave it all behind, right? Going to search for something new. Go search for the hidden treasure. Go search for the gold in the hills, right? Leave everything behind. And the merging, that's the thing about Scorpio. It's the merging that you want to do is substantial. And it's a very deep-seated desire to play a more important role in your community, right? To be on the cutting edge of accumulating more value in a collective sense. And it's an all-absorbing union, a more intense union, and you tear yourself away from the known and familiar. There's that sun in Capricorn, and that, like, the structure and security and establishment. You're tearing yourself away from it and gambling it on a dream or a vision. When you feel into the relativity of social values, I feel like this makes this really hard to get fully into. And this is the crisis in consciousness. Now, what was our full moon about? Well, it's the idea that we found our sustainment and expression through this idea that we're never alone, right? That we're all impacting each other, and that we're all together, and nothing exists in a vacuum. And the other side of that with the moon in Aries was the necessity as an individual to take responsibility for how your impulse to be impacts the whole, because they're inseparable. So we take that full moon recognition, that full realization on some level, and now we find ourselves in a crisis of what are we going to be conscious of? Where are we going to put our attention and our consciousness? And it's not about one or the other. It's about leaning into it and coming out the other side with a new perspective entirely. So I think this is a really difficult position to be in, because how do you find a yearning for and a deep-seated desire to play a more important role and search for new values when you are becoming very acutely aware within your own intuition how social values are ever changing, and to the confrontation can lead to a lot of bitterness, but it also can show us the impermanence of what these social values are that are impressed upon us too. So in some ways, it as difficult as it feels, it will in fact create a space that will show us something completely new. Now it's going to get, I think once the moon is in Virgo over the weekend, that's where we're really going to start addressing our emotional hygiene related to these issues, because we have to really be real with ourselves and get down into the nitty-gritty and detail-oriented work on our own frequency, our own vibration, and our ability to feel into these things. So when we look at this T-square, then we see that the moon is going to be in an opposition to Saturn. And, we do feel this, it's like we're trying to bring things within ourselves. It's almost like bringing ourselves into a position of inner chaos, right? Where we think what we're doing is bringing things to a new level of it'll ultimately set the stage for new growth, but it has to go into non-differentiation, into chaos. And the opposition here with Saturn and Aquarius is just like, no, there are very distinct forms that are very structured in front of us, that are showing us what we can be and what we can grow into and what it means to be in a collective. But they're not real. They're just archetypes. They're like wax figures. They're beautiful. They have all the right clothes on, but they're not actually the real organic structure. It's just a formation. And so while that, it's like, how are we going to actually get past what that represents, if we don't just like completely, strip everything down, a sense of chaos within ourselves? Well, that's what the T-square really sets up for us with the sun, right? Our sustainment and our expression through a passionate search for new values. But I feel like that what's going to happen first is the questioning of like, is this even worth it? And then you get this opposition, and then you're like, oh yes, it is worth it. Actually, I need to follow through on this expression and this deep-seated desire and yearning to get to the bottom of what it means to be in a relationship with other humans, because otherwise you're going to find yourself in a real battle between what is being provided and what is clearly structured in terms of where we're going, and this really strong, like, just falling apart, right? Falling apart, thinking that what you're doing is creating a more peaceful society or a peaceful landscape within yourself. But really what you're doing is breaking everything down so it's completely chaotic. So you have no choice but to start creating something. Now, the potential here is that you break everything down into this chaotic, non-differentiated state within yourself, right? Where you're like a blank canvas or an open book. The tendency is to just go right back to the old ways with just a new face on it. This is why this is important, because otherwise you'll just default to what's being provided. This is important. That's where this T-square is really going to come into effect. And this is all by the end of the day. So as we go through today, it's going to be building up to this point. And this sextile with Jupiter and Venus, I think, is really a big part of preparing us for this moment. So I would expect on some level that, depending on especially where you find your moon. So if you're Aquarius rising like I am, it's in your 7th house and very close to my ruling planet of Jupiter, because I have a sun in Sagittarius. So there is actually, that's a great segue, because right from there, we find right after that happens, that T-square, we have this incredible healing moment where the moon comes into a trine with Chiron. And there's a moment of like exaltation that can really heal these parts of ourselves right now that are really struggling to see these old images in a new way. And so we go through this breakdown of ourselves, this emotional breakdown to a state of like it's just blank now. It's just chaos. Nothing makes any sense. Nothing has any form. And then we find ourselves in this moment where we actually can do some significant healing work on these old images that now are meant to have new meaning to us individually. And we can feel this exaltation that rises within us as we've gone through what will feel like a test, a long night that's tested our faith and our strength. And again, if you go back to earlier when the moon was in that sextile with the North Node, it begins here. Because if we are able to stay focused on where we're going, which is being open to receive the blessings, to be open to interact with that which we have set off to discover, then it will be infectious and spread to others if we are allowing it to do so. And I think it starts there. And so that the whole day builds from this initial connection here. And we have to invest, right? We have to actually make the investment. We have to actually be on the dragon and know that we're going in this direction. And also at the same time, this will allow us to reconcile the output as well that we emotionally will output, which is like an infection or an epidemic. It's so it's so cheesy and classless, but that's what it means, right? An infection, it spreads out. So I'm going to leave it there. Chiron, like I said, by the end of today, the trine with Chiron is a beautiful moment of healing ourselves. And healing ourselves from a very baseline individual level, and then healing ourselves as the rebirth, the solar rebirth that Leo really represents, and an exalted feeling of passing through the night and coming out into the morning and being like, oh, I see now. I see. It doesn't have to be what I thought it was. Oh boy. I'm really feeling this too, a lot. So I really appreciate everybody being here so much. I'm going to end it here for today. I'm going to check in with the stream real quick. Ever cyclical, this too shall pass. The stability is the rock with which you stand upon, right? This is the whole point of October. When you know that the rock isn't moving, the stormy seas around you do not seem so bad, right? You can be fearful, you can be nervous. Certainly we've all had that experience, but you also can accept, just like Sonia said, that the stability is the rock, whatever that rock is for you. And I feel like that we're going to have that really tested today, but we're also going to come out of it realizing where we are stable and what is relative. That way we have a real desire to go searching for new values that correspond to what is stable to begin with. So you guys, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so much. If you want to support this channel financially, you can go to the link for Subscribestar and subscribe. You have to do it monthly. I don't know how Subscribestar works in terms of if they send you a reminder, but I don't have access to recurring subscription payments until I get at least 5 subscribers. So that's my goal right now, is to at least get 5 subscribers. And then from there, I will be able to start adding new exclusive content for people who are subscribed, which I'm really excited about. So, and if you're not on my email list, you can do that by going to catalystenergies.net in the description box below, and you can go to there's a splash page that comes up right away. So you can just sign up there, and then I send about 3 emails out a month with all of and if I'm offering any new services or any sales, and just kind of, putting out some content that maybe will be relevant to people, especially if you're not on social media. So that's always an option. So thank you guys. I love you. Enjoy your day. Do the best that you can. Realize that if everything kind of dissolves all within you and you're like, I don't know what to believe, know that that's going to make your stability even more obvious to you. And at that point, it gives you the impetus to really start exploring realms that are unknown and unfamiliar to you at this point. So I love you. And we'll be together tomorrow for the weekly astrology report, which I'm looking forward to. So take care. God bless. I love you. Bye.